The 3DS Kirby games have by far been the most difficult challenges we've faced thus far in our ongoing series of Kirby No Jump challenges. Today we shall see if Meta Knight fares any better or worse than Kirby did on one of them. Is it possible to beat Kirby Planet Robobot Meta Knightmare Returns without jumping? So, as you might expect, today we'll be playing the Meta Knightmare Returns mode on Kirby Planet Robobot, in which you play through much of the levels you'd play through in the main story mode, but as Meta Knight instead of Kirby. Our goal will of course be to get to the end of this mode and beat its final boss without jumping or hovering. You know, that thing you do by pressing the A button. Instead, we'll have to use other parts of our moveset as jump replacements, which, speaking of... My first instinct with Meta Knight was to try using the upward slash, since that's such a historically good move that Sword has. Unfortunately, Meta Knight does not have access to the upward slash, he just stabs upwards when we try to do an upward attack. That isn't to say he lacks any jump replacements, though. One of those jump replacements is the Mach Tornado, activated by holding down the attack button and then holding up when we release it. Now obviously, one of the Mach Tornado's weaknesses is the fact that you have to take the time to charge it up before you can use it, so we don't have great reaction times with it. The other issues are that we can't use it in the air, so we can't fly with it, and that its height is honestly quite pitiful. Luckily, Meta Knight has another move at his disposal that may help offset some of those shortcomings: the Shuttle Loop. This move is activated by quickly tapping down and then up on the D-pad or circle pad while pressing the attack button, which does make it a very annoying move to use, much like the Whip Tornado. But it does make up for that with its usefulness. The Shuttle Loop sees Meta Knight loop around before starting a controllable glide. We can either use this glide to soar upwards a decent height for a short time, or we can mostly not touch the controls to get a glide with limited elevation, but that goes a very far distance. One thing I will note is that oftentimes the Shuttle Loop ends with an animation of Meta Knight flapping his wings for a bit of extra height. Let me assure you that this is just part of the Shuttle Loop and not a hover. So therefore it's perfectly legal for that to happen. Alright, so now that we've familiarized ourselves with the tools at our disposal, let's dive into the first level of our journey. Once we've gotten used to Meta Knight's moveset, the first portion of level 1 is not of much issue. The enemies aren't threatening, and the platforming demanded isn't very precise. Things do start to get a bit spicy when Clanky Woods 2.0 puts us under time pressure by chasing us through a portion of the level. I imagine this would have been fairly difficult if not for the fact that Meta Knight is so strong and amazing that he can just break all of the obstacles in his way. Soon thereafter we come across this pipe, which is slightly unintuitive to get in and use. The secret is to stand on top of the pipe and then drop into it from there. We see Meta Knight showing off his amazing power some more before boarding a battery-laden train. This bodes poorly for us because we can't use any of our jump replacements while holding a battery, and therefore these things have the potential to cause a lot of forced jumps. Luckily for us, most of the batteries on this train are completely optional and do not need to be used whatsoever. And the ones that do need to be used are very easy to get to where they need to go without having to jump at all. So with that train part behind us, the next obstacle we come face to face with is this ludicrously steep hill. The Mach Tornado certainly can't get us up it, and at first glance it would seem that neither can the Shuttle Loop, especially as the terraces narrow towards the top. Luckily, that impression is just flat wrong. The stairs we face here, as it turns out, are placed at basically the maximum height one Shuttle Loop can manage, so with a bit of precision, we can make it by. The rest of the level consists of a lasery climby section, which isn't too bad, as well as some retreads in the sorts of environments we've already seen, which can also be surmounted with relative ease. So now it's time to fight Clanky Woods 2.0. For this fight, while I feel I could deal my damage quicker if I had access to jumping, we do still manage to make steady progress and shortly find that we have beaten the boss. Now time to hit the streets of level 2. Only about a minute in, we discover this rooftop section, which calls for precise shuttle loops going about as high as they possibly can, just like that hill staircase from earlier. The main difference here is the bottomless pits. You can just barely make it to all the required platforms though, so it's more dangerous, but it is still certainly possible. The next section is awful for one simple reason. It's made almost entirely out of those platforms you can tap down to fall through. Unfortunately for us, the Mach Tornado doesn't have enough height to scale these platforms. That means we're stuck using the Shuttle Loop, which is a move that requires you to tap down before you can use it. As such, it is extremely easy to cause Meta Knight to fall through the platforms while you're in the midst of trying to do a Shuttle Loop. Then at the top, these tiny platforms are so annoying to successfully land on. What I ended up doing was facing away from the platform I was trying to get onto, and standing just about underneath it. Then I allowed the first part of the Shuttle Loop to do all of the work for me and just land me straight on the next platform, which actually worked surprisingly well. I'd like to say that's the only difficult part of level 2, but unfortunately it's not. I was actually stuck in this little space for quite a while until I managed to nail the timing to cancel out of a Shuttle Loop with an upward stab at just the right moment to be able to start climbing. Later on, we encounter a mechanical Kirby in a casino. These things show up as a sort of puzzle from time to time, and effectively just copy whatever you make Meta Knight do. Unfortunately, that only extends as far as what moves are contained in a copy-ability-less Kirby's moveset. So that means no jump replacements. And therefore, this Robo-Kirby is completely stuck and worthless to us. Luckily, this one is optional, as we can just Shuttle Loop over the obstacle it was meant to help us get past. Hopefully we can be as lucky with future ones as well. Next up, I get annoyed by having to grab onto some ladders straight out of a Shuttle Loop. It's far from impossible, but getting the correct range, timing, and the like set up is oh so annoying. We encounter another optional Robo-Kirby, and then this tall shaft. I don't really know what to do here. I don't think any of our jump replacements can actually get us the height we need to get through, unfortunately. And I'm pretty sure neither of them give us the ability to fly either, right? Well, actually, as it turns out, if you can manage to do the tap down and then tap up and press the attack button in midair to trigger the Shuttle Loop, then you can actually do the Shuttle Loop in midair, which means you can fly with the Shuttle Loop, which proves to be sufficient to get us through this shaft successfully. The fact that the Shuttle Loop can fly then comes in real handy in this next room with a high-up floating door. So a couple of Shuttle Loops zigzagging across the room, and then the correct timing to cancel out of them does manage to get us through. At last, we reach the Hollow Defense API 2.0, boss of level 2, which honestly I think was actually a bit easier than Clanky Woods. There actually isn't that much to say about level 3, since so much of it takes place underwater, where you can't jump anyway. We do confirm here that the Shuttle Loop can be done from the surface of the water though. Also, this pair of shafts with the ice cream cones did take some serious consideration to get up. In no time though, we're fighting Susie 2.0, which isn't too bad. The start of level 4 is simply fun because you can smack those rolling cylinders out of your way. I don't know why, but it is just so satisfying. Things do get a bit concerning when this beam and a load of batteries show up. The good news is that they're completely optional. I then ended up settling for a half-built floor for this mini-boss fight. It went fine in spite of that, though. We then find another Robo-Kirby section, which is once again optional. Then we get to destroy some hammers. We do come across a mandatory battery, though. Luckily, it is like right next to where it needs to be used, and there are no jumps required to get it there, so we're still in the clear. And just like that, we're at the boss fight. Stock Meta Knight can be a bit annoying to hit in Phase 2, but with some patience and good blocking, it's certainly manageable. I ended up having to start level 5 over after I got soft-locked in a cannon. If you don't manage to fire the cannon, the only way out is by jumping, which obviously we can't do, hence the restart. Luckily, that's the hardest challenge we have to face in this level, until we reach this ladder, which is unjustifiably difficult to cling onto. Eventually we manage it, though. I thought this auto-scrolling background teleporter section would be pretty tough, but it actually went by quite smoothly, a statement which also applies to the boss. Now, one of the interesting things about level 6 is the sheer quantity of Security Force 2.0 boss fights it's populated with. And honestly, they don't really give us much trouble, so right away, that's a lot of this level's teeth taken away. One notable section is when we come across some tilt combos, which we obviously can't use due to the fact that the only way out of one of those once you're in it is by jumping. Instead, we just shuttle loop across the whole level. Speaking of, that's exactly what we do instead of taking part in the next Robo-Kirby section. Then we have to deal with these relatively annoying platforms similar to that one section from level 2. A similar strategy ends up taking root here to get us through successfully. Then we're faced with a load of vignettes harkening back to the prior levels. The only particularly difficult one was this one with the sky octopi. It's just very frustrating to have to use a move as finicky as the shuttle loop from the surface of the water while under a near constant barrage. Eventually though, we do find our opening and capitalize on it. Clanky Woods then returns for another chase, but again, Meta Knight's great strength makes the encounter mostly trivial. And that brings us to the final bosses. Haltman 2.0 is pretty similar to the Susie fight from earlier, and honestly pretty easy. After that, Stardream decides to test our admin status with even more bosses, starting with Dark Matter Clone, who is pretty annoying to hit on account of all the flying. Upward stabs do a decent job though, and soon he's been dispatched. Next up is Sectonia Clone, another flyer and one with much more annoying attacks. Good footwork and blocking can make the difference though, letting us stay healthy and alive long enough to chip away at her health and win. Then finally, it's Galacta Knight Returns, who may be the most difficult one yet due to his blocks, erratic movement, and better attacks. Good blocking on our part is key here to obtaining victory, which by the skin of our teeth, we do indeed achieve. Which means we have an answer. Is it possible to beat Kirby Planet Robobot, Meta Knightmare Returns without jumping? Yes. Yes, it is. As it turns out, not being forced into a mech suit every few stages does wonders for one's ability to beat this game without jumping. So hats off to you, Meta Knight, you succeeded where Kirby had fallen short. And speaking of, if you haven't already, you should probably check out my other Kirby No Jump videos. Perhaps Kirby taking on Planet Robobot, or alternatively, you could watch Meta Knight try to get through Star Allies. Additionally, if you like what you've seen today, please like this video, subscribe for more, and ring the bell. But anyways guys, until next time, I have been CMeeCraft, and I will catch you in the next video. Goodbye.